Welcome to day 3 of the 12 Days of Celtic Mythology, Series 3. I'm here to tell you some stories found in one twisted corner of the web of Celtic myth. We'll be following their threads along some of the more scenic routes of Celtic lore. Yesterday's question was about why we have so many flood stories, and I loved the variety of answers I saw in the comments. At least one person mentioned the liminal qualities of water. So it's not something I've touched on very much in this series. It's something I talk about quite a lot when I'm teaching. But thanks for the reminder, we might get to that tomorrow. I think we probably will. And another person wrote about the healing property of wells. And certainly the well that's supposedly where Bran's inundation happened, is now associated with healing. As well as their healing properties, the person mentioned, of course, the water has power to harm and destroy, as in inundation stories. And that made me think about Apollo and his arrows, and how in Gaul, Apollo was often combined with deities of healing wells. So that could just be my own, my brain making connections that aren't necessarily there culturally, but it was interesting. So let's get on with today's story, The Voyage of Bran. I'm going to take a drink of tea before I start this. So we've heard a story of Bran, son of Feval, whose kingdom was drowned when he tried to steal treasure from women of the otherworld who lived in a well beside the sea. This is another tale about Bran, son of Feval, and a voyage he undertook one time. A woman from the other world came to Bran's court while he was entertaining other kings. No one knew where she came from, because the gates of his court were closed. But she stood in the center of his house and sang a long and beautiful song. And this is how it happened. One day Bran was near his fortress, walking alone, when he heard music behind him. And he looked back many times, and nothing was to be seen, yet the music persisted. It was lovelier than any music Bran had ever heard, and it soothed him so much that it lulled him to sleep. And when he awoke, he saw a silver branch lying beside him, covered with white blossoms. It was exceedingly beautiful. Bran picked the branch up and returned to his house, for he was expecting many royal visitors that day. Soon the court was full of kings, and then they saw a woman standing in the middle of the house, dressed in strange clothing. They looked at her in wonder, and she said these words: "I bring an apple branch from Awen. Its twigs are of white silver, and its blossoms with fair crystals. I speak of a distant island. Around it are the crested waves of the sea. Like a throng of fair horses is the swelling tide there. It stands upon 4 pillars. Delightful to look on is the plain of contests, with coracle and chariot competing to the south of the fair silver plain. Upheld by pillars of white bronze forever is that lovely eternal land. It is abounding in white blossoms from an ancient tree. In its branches, harmonious birdsong at every hour. Harmonious also the colors that glisten over the plain of the silver clouds. Gentle music fills them. Trouble and treachery are unknown in that kindly place. There is no harshness, only the sound of sweet music. There is no sorrow there, no sickness, death, or suffering. No other place surpasses Awen. It is a fair and wondrous land of soft skies. If you could but see the bounteous land where crystals and dragonstones drop, where the sea washes the land with its mane of crystals, wealth and treasure of every color awaits in the gentle land. It is abounding in freshness and sweet music, drinking of the finest wines. Golden chariots over the plain of the sea rise with the sun's tide. Silver chariots across the plain of games. Bronze chariots without blemish. Horses of yellow gold. Horses of crimson color. Horses with the blue-white hue of the waves on their backs. There comes with the sun a fair man who illumines the land. He rides the shining plain against which the sea beats. He stirs up the sea until it is blood red. The host rose over the clear sea from the land and the large stone, from which pours 100 melodies. It sings an ancient song to them, joyous and swelling, as of many voices joined in chorus. They expect neither death nor decay. Shapely, sea-girt Awen, inhabited by women, clothed in every color. He who hears the bird's song of this very gentle land, he shall see the woman coming from the height onto the plain of sport. There will be everlasting health and laughter in the plain of sport. Joy abides there forever. In lasting weather, silver is showered upon the lands. There are sun-warmed white cliffs above the sea. The hosts race on the plain of sports, vigorous their contest. In the many-colored land, death and decay are unknown. The land glistens like a colorful crown with a shining white cloud above it. To the west are 3 times 50 islands, each one double or treble the size of Ireland. In times yet to come, a great man will be born in a lowly place, his father unknown. He will seize the kingship over many thousands in an unending rule. He has perfected the earth and sea. Woe to anyone who is against him. He made the heavens and loves pure hearts. He will purify multitudes with water and heal their sickness. You may all listen to my words and the marvels I speak of, yet it is to Bran that I direct my speech. Let him have ears to hear the wisdom that is offered. Let him not waste his time in sloth or drunkenness. Rather, let him begin a voyage over the clear sea to see the land of women. And when she'd finished speaking, the woman turned to leave them, and the branch, which Bran was still holding, sprang from his hand and into the hand of the woman. Had he tried, he would not have been strong enough to hold on to it. So tomorrow, we'll find out what happens to Bran next. But in the meantime, I want to think about that silver branch. You may know that a similar branch turns up in another story about Cormac visiting the other world, having been lured there by Manannán mac Lir. So let's take a look at that part of the story. So I'm going to jump around a bit between 2 different translations they're of the same story, but different versions of the story from different Irish texts. So I want to highlight some different things in the story. So I'm going to jump between Whitley Stokes and John Koch a bit. So this is the way the story begins in one version, which it just describes things a bit more fully. It's not different otherwise, really. One day at dawn in Maytime, Cormac, grandson of Conn, was alone on Muir Tay in Tara. He saw coming toward him a warrior, sedate, grey-haired, a purple fringed mantle around him, a shirt ribbed and gold-threaded next to his skin, 2 blunt shoes of white bronze between his feet and the earth, a branch of silver with 3 golden apples on his shoulder. Delight and amusement enough it was to listen to the music made by the branch, for men sore wounded, or women in childbed, or folk in sickness would fall asleep at the melody which was made when that branch was shaken. Then Cormac felt a great, unbearable love for the branch, and said that he would give him the 3 best gifts in Ireland in exchange for it. And the warrior gave him the branch and bound him to yield those 3 gifts up to him whenever he should come to ask for them. Then Cormac shook the branch in Drumcane, so that all the people of Ireland, men, children, and women, fell into a single slumber of sleep. I find this part interesting. Cormac felt a great, unbearable love for the branch, which he basically will give anything for. Then we hear about its sleep-inducing properties. It's almost being described like a narcotic. I don't personally take it in a negative sense, but Cormac does seem to almost kind of crave it. Of course, the bargain goes about as well as you'd expect when a mortal makes an open-ended promise. At the end of a year after that, the warrior came, and the first gift for which he asked in exchange for the branch was Elba Grugbrech, Cormac's daughter. And she was given to him, and the women of all Ireland made a great wailing and a mighty outcry, lamenting the girl, until the branch was shaken at them, and their care and sorrow left them at once. The women in labor and wounded men would sleep at the music of the branch. So Cormac ends up using the branch to placate the women who are upset because he's given his daughter away. There's something a bit morally ambiguous about all this. In the story, the pattern repeats. The warrior, who, if you haven't figured it out, is Manannán, comes back later for Cormac's only son, and then finally he comes for Cormac's wife. This finally spurs Cormac to take action, so he follows the warrior to the other world. And I just want to look at one short bit, so we're going back to Whitley Stokes again. This part is only in one of the Irish versions. So then he sees, that's Cormac, in the garth. A garth is like a courtyard. Then he sees in the garth a shining fountain with 5 streams flowing out of it. And the hosts in turn are drinking its water. 9 hazels of Buin grow over the well. The purple hazels drop their nuts into the fountain, and the 5 salmon which are in the fountain sever them and send their husks floating down the streams. Now the sound of the falling of those streams is more melodious than any music that men sing. So you may have noticed that I talk about a web of connections between different stories. So in following Manannán, Cormac has found himself at a place which seems to be a kind of palace where Manannán lives. Yet in the courtyard is a version of Nechtan's well, the very same well that Buan here in the text, tampered with yesterday, which resulted in the flood which created the river Boyne. But notice also the description of the sound of the streams. Now the sound of the falling of those streams is more melodious than the music any men sing. It's just like the silver branch, just like the music described by the otherworld woman who visited Bran in today's story. In a way, the silver branch seems like a sort of portable version of the properties of the otherworld. Cormac in the otherworld is really another story for another time. I cover it pretty thoroughly in the Manannán and Beyond class, which happens sort of May, June time every year. So let's turn our attention to the description of the otherworld that we heard today. Like the first Bran story, which is sometimes called Bran's Adventure, so we know which story we're talking about. Are we talking about the adventure, the one we've heard the last 2 days, or the Voyage of Bran? Both of these texts are poetry. The version I shared with you was my paraphrase. The poetry is gorgeous, but I know that it can be a little harder for some listeners to get the sense of everything when it's poetry. So in my paraphrase today, I tried to retain a sense of the poem and a little bit of poetic language, but not so much that you would be confused. There's only one translation of the Voyage of Bran which is widely available. It's from the 19th century, but fortunately, it's not only quite a good translation technically, it's quite nicely done. The poetry's still quite good. Amazing when you consider that it was rendered into English by Kuno Meyer, who was a German. I share a link to it in the notes today, so you'll be able to find it. There's a more modern translation by Seamus Mahana, but it's hard to get hold of. There's also a really good poetic version by Robin Williamson, the Scottish singer and bard. And you can hear him reciting it in a YouTube video, and I'll link to that as well. It's really lovely and also quite close to the original, as well as the beautiful descriptions of nature and music. The descriptions of the other world itself are worth looking at. This is from Kuno Meyer. Feet of white bronze under it, glittering through beautiful ages, lovely land throughout the world's age, on which many blossoms drop. An ancient tree there is with blossoms, on which birds call to the hours. 'Tis in harmony, it is their wont to call together every hour. I'll explain why hour is capitalized in a moment. So is this tree the source of the silver branches, perhaps? Did you notice that Bran's branch had blossoms on it, and Cormac's branch had apples on it? And sometimes the apple trees in the other world are described as having both apples and blossoms at the same time, which of course doesn't happen in nature, but it would be a sort of ever-renewing source of fruit. And then a world supported by feet of white bronze. I'm sure this is referenced in another text, and I can't remember what text that is. So if anyone knows, please put it in the comments and remind me. And the importance of otherworld bird song. Also, they're singing the religious hours. This is why Meyer has capitalized hour. They're being likened to the singers in churches and convents who used to sing, Matin and Vespers and all the other many times during the day and night that they were obliged to get up and sing. So that's an interesting thing, the description of the birds in the other world kind of taking a similar role and doing a similar thing as was happening in medieval Christianity. Now, golden chariots in Moiraine, this means the plain of the sea, and golden chariots of silver in Moimon means the plain of sports. Like a lot of medieval manuscripts, the Voyage of Bran has some glosses that were put in by the scribe, who is obviously copying it from somewhere else, or somebody else is coming back and glossing and explaining some of the things in the text. There's some strong sun imagery here. Golden chariots in Moiraine, rising with the tide to the sun. Chariots of silver in Moimon, and of bronze without blemish. It's like all these shining chariots rising with the sun. And a sunrise there will come, fair man illumining level lands. This is a few stanzas. There's a few stanzas between these two. But a sunrise there will come, a fair man illumining level lands. He rides on the fair sea-washed plain. He stirs the ocean till it is blood, which I've assumed means till it's the color of blood. Now there are some strong things here about the sun. A golden chariot rising with the tide of the sun. This reminds me of the Greek god Helios. And then a silver and a bronze chariot, because, the Irish love their bling. Then a few stanzas on, this next image, at sunrise will come a fair man illumining the lands. This sounds kind of either still sun deity-ish or maybe Christ-like. But the next two lines sound a bit like Manannán, or maybe not. It's hard to say. Stirring up the sea until it's like blood could refer to the redness of the sunrise above the sea. A great birth will come, after ages, that will not be in a lofty place, the son of a woman whose mate will not be known. He will seize the rule of many thousands, a rule without beginning, without end. He has created the world so that it is perfect. Whose are earth and sea? In other words, the one to whom earth and sea belong created the world. Woe to him that shall be under his unwill. So this is definitely describing Christ, the lowly birth, the unknown father, the unending rule. He also sounds rather terrible here, like this isn't gentle hippie Jesus. He will seize the rule of many thousands. Woe to him that shall be under his unwill. I love that word, unwill. Then at the very end of this speech, the woman's speech, she says this to Bran: "Not to all of you is my speech, though its great marvel has been made known. Let Bran hear from the crowd of the world what of wisdom has been told to him." I remember when Robin Williamson translates this, he says, "Not to every man is my offer given," which I think is a great way of explaining what this means. What she's saying is that while everyone has heard what she has to say, the words are directed to Bran. It's Bran who's being invited to the other world, not all these other people. And I think that's a fitting question for today. Why Bran? And this doesn't seem very democratic. Why does he get invited to the other world? So the other world, what is it? And who gets to go there is a tricky question, which I think is muddied by Christian habits of thought, which we pretty much all have in the West, whether we were raised Christian. It's just kind of around. Theoretically, everyone has a chance at the Christian heaven in the Christian setup. But I don't think, in spite of how it's described here, that we should see this other world as an Irish equivalent of the Christian heaven. I don't think that there's evidence that it's where the dead go, for example. And I'll put a link to a video which talks about Celtic conceptions of death. I'll link it at the end of this video. So I'll be teaching a short class later in the year called Otherworld Journeys, which really examines different descriptions of the otherworld in Irish and Welsh texts as well. So if you're interested, I think that's it's way off. It's in September or something. So I hope you come back tomorrow, because things are about to get seriously strange for Bran. So bye-bye for now, guys. Celtic mythology. Where do you begin? How do you keep all those names straight? And how do you pronounce them? So here you are, trying to learn about Celtic mythology. You've tried looking online, but all the answers are different. It's hard to know which information is trustworthy. Maybe you bought a few books, and the result hasn't been as good as you'd hoped. You didn't quite find what you were looking for, and then some know-it-all told you that your books were wrong anyway. Hang in there, help is at hand. But I'll be honest with you, Celtic mythology is a big topic. You can't learn it all from one book or one website. You can't learn it all in a month or even a year. Maybe you're past that beginner stage. You feel like you've found some good resources, but it's still hard to progress. Maybe you've spent a lot of time on one area, a particular set of stories or a deity that you're interested in, but all the names and the jargon are still confusing. You're not sure how one thing relates to another. You've been in the weeds, you've been in the trees, now you need to get organized. I've got a new class starting soon called Introduction to Celtic Mythology. Whether you're an absolute beginner or someone who's been exploring for a while, this should give you a good foundation to build on. My aim is to give people a clear understanding of what Celtic myth actually is, where it comes from, and a good, solid overview of all the ingredients. This is a 12-week course. About half of it is dedicated to material from Wales and half to Ireland. Part of what I'll be teaching is how the different stories and groups of stories are usually organized, so that things are less of a jumble for you. Then we'll learn about what's in some of the most famous or most important stories, who some of the main characters are, and what the story is about. I'll also make sure that you're building up skills so that when the class ends, you're well equipped to do your own further research. Every week, I'll be featuring a book and a website that I find useful, including some tricks for finding what you're actually looking for on the internet. I always send out a PDF of notes after my classes, and you can expect them to be full of useful links. That will include links for further reading or videos, and links to where you can find proper translations of most of the stories. And speaking of stories, I know people want stories. It's why we like mythology, after all. So there will be a bit of storytelling every week, and of course, you'll get a link to where you can read the original text that it came from. This will be a lot to pack into the course, but I will make sure that there's time set aside every week to answer your questions. You don't need any prior knowledge of Celtic myth or Celtic languages for this class. I'll start with the most basic basics, and we'll build from there. By the end, I think you'll be surprised at how much you've learned, and you should have a nice, clear understanding of things. There's more information at the link below this video.